boy, starved, beaten, thrown away like trash, alone in life, alone in death. His body, small and broken, crammed into a filthy cardboard box, left to rot in the cold Pennsylvania woods. No name, no past, no one to mourn him. For decades, he was only known as the boy in the box. And though his identity was finally revealed in 2022, his murder remains one of the most chilling, heartbreaking, and horrifying mysteries in American history. Who killed him? Who tortured him? And why did no one come forward to claim him? Viewer discretion is advised. The horrifying discovery, February 25, 1957. It was an ordinary afternoon in Fox Chase, Philadelphia. The air was cold, damp. The trees stood barren, their skeletal branches scratching at the sky like claws. Hidden deep in the brush, forgotten and waiting to be found, sat a cardboard box. A college student named Frederick Benosis was out scavenging through the woods, looking for discarded animal traps. His boots crunched over the dead leaves, his breath thick in the winter air. And then he saw it. A large, battered JCPenney box, plain, unremarkable. But something inside was off. The flaps slightly open, just enough for a gust of wind to lift them, revealing a glimpse of something pale, something that shouldn't be there. Frederick stepped closer, his heart pounded. He reached forward, hesitated, and then flipped the lid fully open. Inside lay horror. A small boy, naked, frail, twisted into a fetal position, as if he had been shoved inside carelessly. His eyes were shut, his mouth slightly open, frozen mid-scream. His skin was marked with bruises and deep scars, each one telling a story of suffering. His hair had been roughly, cruelly cut. Jagged strands still clung to his chest and shoulders, as if his killer had tried to alter his appearance before discarding him. His tiny hands and feet had been meticulously washed, as if someone had desperately tried to erase any trace of themselves from his corpse. But nothing could hide the truth. This child had suffered, and he had suffered for a long time. Autopsy report a life of unimaginable torture. The coroner's report painted a picture of pain, suffering, and horror. The boy, estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old, weighed only 30 pounds, severely underweight for his age. Malnourished, deprived of food, his body had wasted away, leaving his ribs pressing against his thin, fragile skin. But starvation wasn't what killed him. The real horror lay in his wounds. The child's body was covered in scars, some fresh, some old, a road map of unthinkable abuse. His arms, his legs, his torso. Some marks looked like surgical incisions, crude and imprecise, raising the terrifying possibility that he had been subjected to medical experimentation, or worse, torture disguised as treatment. And then his skull caved in, the fatal blow, a savage, deliberate act of violence. His tiny head had been struck with brutal force, fracturing the bone, causing massive brain damage. The impact had been so severe that death would have been instantaneous. Or at least that's what investigators hoped. But the truth, we may never know if he suffered even longer before finally slipping away. The theories: who killed the boy in the box? Theory 1, the foster home horror. Investigators turned their attention to a nearby foster home known for its strict discipline and dark rumors of abuse. They found a bassinet, eerily similar to the one that had once been sold in the same box that the boy was found in. Was he an unwanted child from the home? A secret child of one of the caretakers? A fostered boy whose suffering was silenced by death? Authorities pursued the lead, but the evidence vanished. No records, no missing child, just a dead-end road leading into darkness. Theory 2, the woman who knew too much. Decades later, in 2002, a woman known only as M came forward with a disturbing story. According to her, her mother had bought the boy as a slave. He was beaten, starved, tortured for months before being killed in a blind rage. The details were horrifying. The constant abuse, the night he was beaten unconscious, and how in a panic they had dumped his lifeless body in the woods. But was her story true? Investigators checked, dug deeper, but M had a history of severe mental illness, and despite the gut-wrenching possibility that she was telling the truth, no hard evidence was ever found. Another dead end. Theory 3, the unknown monster. Maybe the answer is even worse than we imagine. Maybe the boy was never reported missing because the one who killed him was the very person who should have protected him. A father, a mother, a relative, someone who had been starving him, beating him, torturing him for months, maybe years. And when he was finally broken beyond repair, they discarded him like trash. His death was not an accident. It was the final brutal act of a nightmare that had gone on for far too long. And in the end, no one was looking for him, because no one who knew him cared if he was gone. 2022, a name but no justice. For over 60 years he was a ghost. But in 2022, DNA technology finally gave him a name. Joseph Augustus Zarelli, a child who had once laughed, once played, once dreamed, but knowing his name didn't bring him justice. His parents, identified but never charged. His killer, still unknown. The mystery, still unsolved. How did Joseph end up in that box? Who stripped the life from his small, fragile body, and why did no one come forward to claim him? Maybe the killer is still out there. Maybe the truth was buried long ago, sealed in silence. But one thing is certain, the horror of what happened to that little boy will never be forgotten.